What's important to you? My mission is to ask as many people as possible this question, because I believe once you know what's important, you can design and build a life of purpose, meaning, and fulfillment. My name is James Dean. I'm a life coach, and I hope this podcast inspires you to uncover what's important to you. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at James Dean Coaching, or connect with me on LinkedIn. You can also learn how I can help you understand what's important at jamesdeancoaching.com. Today's guest is a podcast host, corporate speaker, and mindfulness teacher. He supports IT professionals to be more present in their day and build resilience to help them get through the tough times in life. He has worked in the software industry in Ireland for over 20 years. In that time, his career and his life have had many ups and downs. In 2013, he turned to mindfulness to help him navigate a particularly tough time in his life. This decision transformed his life and led him to become an expert in the area of mindfulness and mindful living. He now uses those skills and the principles that he learned to help others. His podcast, The Mindful Living Guide, has featured in the top 10 most listened to podcasts in Ireland for mental health. His Mindfulness TEDx talk entitled The Value of a Moment has been watched by thousands on the TEDx YouTube channel. Today, we find out what's important to Stephen Downey. Hi, Stephen. Thank you so much for joining me today.
It's an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate you asking me.
I'm delighted. I'm really looking forward to chatting to you. So we're going to kick straight off, Stephen, with the first question, which is always, what's important to you?
What's important to me? Do you know, actually, I just asked my daughter what does she think is important to me, and she hit the nail on the head. She said family straight away, and but I think it's a really important thing though to know what is important to you. The reason I know family is important to me is because a couple of years ago I went on a journey called 100 Happy Days, and part of that journey was basically capturing a moment every day that you are grateful for, and something that makes you smile. And I think before that, I probably had a vague idea that the family kind of, I was proud, like everyone knows that they did love their family, but I didn't realize until like it was like looking back at all the pictures in those 100 days. And for anyone that doesn't know me, it was actually after a very traumatic time in my life where I was at rock bottom, and I really had to try and find some positivity in my life. And but it was looking back that I realized that it was so many little moments with my family. Because actually, when I asked my daughter, I was thinking she'll say moments, because that's all I ever talk about, just the moments in life, all those special things that happen each day. And it's often the mundane moments that we often forget about. The times where you're sitting on the couch and someone says something, you just laugh. And it's not until those moments, unfortunately, are gone that you realize how important they are. So I've kind of made it a mission of mine to try and find moments every single day, just something small. Like, and it doesn't matter. We all have autopilot on and are living busy lives, and it's just about just stopping and just taking time to appreciate those little moments around us. And for me, because I did that, I realized family is what's important to me.
Yeah, and I think it is when I've asked this question to many people, it does come up with so many people saying family is a big thing. But what I think that you took it there and you just explained that a little bit further is, when we go that one level down into what they say, when you say, oh, what do you mean by family? Is you say that the whole thing of moments, and what you said there in relation to almost the mundane or the simple or the sort of just what people just almost miss if you weren't fully paying attention. Those are the things, because it's that thing of those moments in your family are
Mhm.
and your environment are unique to you and whoever's in that moment or in that experience. So I'm interested in when you say that you went through the experiment or went through a process of 100 days.
Mhm.
So tell me more about that, because that sounds really interesting.
Yeah. So without going too deep into the
Yeah.
reason why, unfortunately, there was a family tragedy and a family member passed away
Mm,
very suddenly in a car crash. And at the time, it was back in 2014. I had two young girls, and they were they were actually worried about me. Now these are like
mm,
this is geez, 2014, 8 years. So Kira would have been about 3, Roshan would have been about 6, and I found that it really hit me, as you can
yeah.
expect. Like, it was a real shock to all our family, and but I found that I wanted to do something positive. I wanted to find some joy in life, and I'm a big believer that things can happen in our life. Tragedy can happen. Things can strike us, and we have a choice.
Mm,
And I often talk about perspective and what perspective we have on life is like, where do we want to go in one direction, or where do we want to say this can be a moment that changes my life, and this is a moment where I find a perspective of what's important. And it was actually a friend who a couple of months before had shared this a thing called 100 Happy Days,
yeah.
and the idea was basically to go and just look for a moment every day. And the reason I did it was because all I was seeing every day was something dark, something really negative each day. And it it's like a lot of people practice gratitude, and it's the same type of thing. Is that
Yep.
when you do this for long enough each day, you find that you start looking for those things.
Yeah.
I was studying mindfulness teaching a couple of years ago, and we studied a great teacher called Dr. Rick Hansen. And one of the practices that he had was called taking in the good. And he had done a lot of research and a lot of study in that we naturally don't remember good moments. We have to absolutely concentrate on them. And I think through his study, he said that it was, I think, at least 30 seconds you had to spend concentrate on a moment, concentrating on something good that happens to you,
Mm,
so that it would seep down out of the short-term memory and into the long-term memory. It's like the phrase we always say that we're kind of, when something negative happens, it's like Velcro will just stick to you. And if you were treated bad in the shop, you want to tell everybody about how bad that shop treated you.
yeah.
But when you go in and the person smiled at you, and you're having a rotten day, and they just made contact. There was just that little bit of social interaction that just
Yeah.
cheered your day up.
Yeah.
Now we're not as inclined to talk about that. We're not
Yeah.
as inclined to chat to people about that for days on end and say, "Oh, last day in the shop, she really cheered me up," you know.
Yeah.
And that's, I think that's the kind of the premise behind this 100 Happy Days, is that you kind of you you look into it, just try and find those moments. And I've done it a few times since, with my own community, and kind of we've gone on that journey. And I always tell them to look for just something that makes you smile,
Mm,
and something that makes you happy. And like, it can be as simple as getting up in the morning and sitting down having a cup of tea
yep.
before anyone else is around, just a bit of peace and quiet, and 10 seconds breath, just sitting there and being, just being.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's I think it's a really I hadn't heard of it, to be honest, but I think it's a really
Mhm.
powerful thing to do, and say obviously the idea or the concept of practicing gratitude and how that plays into it as well. And you say trying to find it in the most simplest of things.
Mm.
But I think there's also, you say, we have this tendency to find or highlight the negative more than the positive.
Mhm.
And it was, when you were saying that, it was also reminding me of a, I think I was reading it in a book years ago of Maureen Gaffney's book. The name of the book escapes me at the moment, but she was talking about a study where when people experience something negative, it
Mhm.
could take almost 7 positives to counteract that
Absolutely.
one negative. And and so if you're not inclined to even try and seek out those positives experiences, and you're only allowing in the negatives, then that sort of balance of how you're going to actually feel is just going to be so tilted in one side. So that whole thing of really, not waiting for it to happen, I suppose, and actually, actively seeking out, as you say, the most simplest of things where you can actually experience happiness as opposed to putting it off.
Yeah. It's like what will I feel when I'm happy? You know, it's like
Yeah.
I often talk about lots of people are on these journeys where they say, if I do this and this, I'll be happy at the end of it. And or a simple example, like going to the gym and trying to go through an exercise program and hating it every single day and hoping that at the very end, when you reach your goal, that you'll be happy. And they don't realize that happiness is the path.
Yeah.
You know, it's that day to day of just finding something that you enjoy each day as you get to it. Um, there's a great philosopher that I follow called Alan Watson, and he is a fantastic. It's from one of his lectures. Actually, someone shared a great video of it a few years ago, and it's all about the journey and about life, and that often people think that life is a journey, but it's not. It's more of a dance. It's like
Mm,
if you go to a concert, the idea is not the best music you'll listen to is not the quickest note or the fastest orchestra. It's getting lost in the moment of that concert. It's getting lost in the dance. And he has a fantastic way to look. I really encourage anyone to look it up. Um, so that he goes through the journey of life all the way through and then looking back and realizing that all along we should have been dancing, you
mm,
know. And it's not until, I think, unfortunately for a lot of us, it's not until we face tragedy in our life and it's like a shock, it's a shock treatment to actually step back and say, right, what is really important here? What
mm.
do I want to look back and be proud of?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think it is and I think is the where I was coming from it in this perspective, because as I said, the question just does was fascinating myself when I was
Yeah.
asking myself. So I was like wanted to ask other people it, and there is this sort of from the people I've spoken to so far, there is this sort of, you say, junction,
Mm-hmm.
for a better word, or the analogy of the fork in the road, or whatever you want to call it, of going down one way, or whether it be in a particular job, career, or a certain sort of, whether it be predestined way of their life, and then they actually, what, had this, as you say, a moment happen,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be, as you say, unfortunate tragedy, or they just had enough in some way, and they said,
Yeah.
what, I just have to do something different. And to me, when a lot of people, it's almost like an itch inside your head you can't scratch, but it never goes away.
Mm-hmm.
That's that thing of like, oh, I'd love to do
Yeah.
XYZ.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then, but it's having whatever the word is, courage, confidence, to actually give it a go.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's yeah, no, it's and I was literally only talking to someone last week about this, and that wouldn't it be great if people could be inspired to do that? But unfortunately, so much of us, we're in an autopilot mode.
Mm,
We're going from day to day, and it's it's very hard to get off that wheel. Even if we're inspired as much as we can, and I think like I'm definitely one of those people that would love to do certain things in my life, and I don't think it's until I have no other option that I'll do them.
yeah,
That other things in life are very comfortable, and I'm enjoying them. And yeah, no, it's unfortunate. Sometimes we need that junction. You know,
yeah,
it's but like I was saying, that it's amazing though that some people can get to that junction and they can hit rock bottom and stay at rock bottom, or they can see a path through. I know a couple of years ago now, I had a kind of ups and downs since my brother passed away, and I had a pretty hard time in 2017, and I was suffering from anxiety and depression very badly, and I had to give up a job. I literally stood up from the desk and walked out one day. It was too stressful for me. I wasn't in a very good mental place at the time, and I remember the next day I had to go visit my wife in the city centre. She was getting an award, and on the way I drove into the Phoenix Park, and at the time I was in an online group with a few people. We were encouraged. It was actually a get paid for your passion group. It was a group of fantastic people that came together, formed by Pat Divley, and we were very open and shared a lot of things. And I still had a video that I recorded that day, where I basically told them what happened, and obviously I was very deeply upset. But it wasn't until I looked at this a couple of years later, and there was one line in it. I said, I was talking about how bad it was. I had no income, and I literally had nothing. I had to contact the banks to try and let them know what was happening with the house, everything. And I asked one question, and that question was, what if this is the best thing could ever happen to me? And in the end, it actually was. It opened my mind to the possibility that we can make decisions like that for our mental health, and that sometimes your health is so much more important that we can do that. And thank God I've gone on, and really a lot of positive things has happened in our life. But again, we have to realize that there'll always be peaks and troughs in life. We'll always have those ups and downs. And I think that's one thing that I've learned from my journey, is that just to embrace the good times and realize that the bad times don't last.
Yeah, I think yeah, absolutely. I mean, thank you for sharing, because it is it's a really powerful thing to hear, and for other people to hear. And it reminds me of, it was probably a video that came up on Facebook, I think it was, where it was a clip of various number of actors. I think it was like Tom Hanks and Al Pacino, or whatever. They were obviously having some sort of discussion. It was a clip of a video they did, and Tom Hanks was sharing a sort of like, they were trying to share wisdom, I suppose, and his thing was like, "This too shall pass."
You just robbed the quote. That's the quote. I can actually show you. Look.
Go for it.
This too shall pass. That's my
there you
quote.
Go. Well, there you think we're gonna have to talk about it now, aren't we? That's it.
Oh.
Well, we do it earlier than we said. Come on, because that's exactly what I would, because I can hear it. So yeah, I think dive into that more, because I think that is exactly what I was getting from it.
Yeah, no, like you asked earlier on, I was asking, is there anything you want me to look at? You said if there's any quotes, and above any quote anywhere. And I've went through a phase of sharing a quote every single day, and lots of really positive things. But the most powerful one ever, and it's a mantra you can bring to your meditation. It's called "This too shall pass." And I actually don't know where it originated from. But it's really letting people know that yes, there will be suffering in life, but it will pass. It's actually funny. I had a bit of a man cold during the week, and my wife was giving out to me, and I used the phrase then as well. I said, "Don't worry, this too shall pass."
How did that go down?
Well, she's out for the night on her own tonight. But no, in all honesty, like it is like it's like, I think it's important to when we're going through a dark time, that we're able to like to find some hope, and to know that like it's not that's one thing about in my mindfulness training, was that we talked an awful lot about the impermanence of life, that nothing is permanent. And it's like we unfortunately through life we often cling on to things that we have, and unfortunately I found it the hard way that not everything lasts forever, and some things that you take for granted can just disappear. And one day they're there, and the next day they're gone.
Mm.
And unfortunately, the people in Donegal at the moment are know all about that. A tragic accident that just happened out of nowhere, that and
Yeah.
lives that people expected to go on for many years
Mm.
cut short. And
Yeah.
but it's the other side of it. It's not about looking at the negative either. It's not about I don't. It's not about kind of putting a dark cloud over every
No.
moment or every situation, but I think it's just bringing a sense of appreciation. Uh,
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think it is the in the sense of those again those tragedies, those especially it's like I was going to say unexpected, but all tragedies that you say is unexpected, and
mm,
but also that cruel reality of it, and you do absolutely feel for those people in sense of if we're talking about in sense of earlier the sort of the mundane of life, and that's what all those people were just literally going about their lives,
yeah,
and for something so awful to happen, and it's horrible, and all those the tragedy that happened, and then the only when you say something like that happens, it is that I don't know. It's not cliche because it is happens, but it you see how it brings out the best of people
yeah,
in those
absolutely.
horrible situations that they wouldn't want to have to be their best, but they are
Yeah,
because, as you say, they have no other choice. And is how those people would have been on any given day, but they just have to do it now for
yeah,
the people that are being affected and their
around them,
families. And it
absolutely.
is an incredible thing when you do see it or witness it or are a part of it. When you see it in a, and when you're, if you're affected by it, even if it's from a tragic circumstances or just circumstance, when someone, especially when it comes to grief, when the people do come out and it kind of takes you aback, and then when you reflect onto it, you kind of think actually they were just being their best.
Yeah,
In the moment, you maybe not see it that way. You kind of almost shocked about
yeah,
it. When you
yeah,
reflect on it, you go, actually, no, that is the best of humanity when it comes out in those
yeah,
circumstances.
absolutely. It is. It is.
Yeah. Tell me then, because you mentioned it a couple of times there about the sort of mindfulness.
Hmm.
Because for you, for the people who may not listen, you have your own, or you're doing your own sort of podcast in relation to mindfulness, and you said you trained on it. Tell me where that came about, and there's the importance that plays in your life now.
Yeah. I actually another phrase I love is things happen for a reason. And about 6 months before my brother passed away, um, I was going through a tough, stressful time in work. I've worked in IT for over 20 years now, and
Mm,
I was going through a particularly stressful time. And there was one day in particular that I just wasn't feeling well. And at the time, I was working for an airline, and we had the most amazing offices inside an air hangar. So when you were actually leaving the office, you'd come out of the office and you walk around, and you're actually on a mezzanine floor looking out on airplanes.
wow.
It's amazing, but when you open that door, there's a big gust of wind, and as it hit me, I actually collapsed. And there was a friend that was with me at the time. She got a bit worried, and
Mm,
I honestly did not know what was going on. Um, Now I realized up to that when it came to certain situations, I approached them differently to other people. I
mm,
took life very seriously back then, and it was like if I was working on a project and I could see something wasn't going to work, it really affected me.
okay.
That I wanted things to. I'd say I was a, a closet perfectionist.
Mm-hmm.
That I wanted things to work right, and I found it very hard if things weren't done right in that way. So I was working on a couple of projects at the same time, all at the same levels of stress, and just trying to juggle a lot. And I collapsed, because we were on the airport side. It was very hard for an ambulance to come through security. So unknown to myself, they had called for an ambulance. They were stuck outside security, trying to get in. They said, "Oh, we'll just send one of the guys down from the airport fire brigade." And I kind of come back, but I was having kind of a type of seizure. I thought,
Mm.
I actually thought I was having a stroke. My voice was going, everything. And when I finally kind of checked me over and they were about to bring me to hospital, I walked outside. And this is an office that I was contracting in, and I was working there a couple of years. And I walk out, and there's two fire brigades and an ambulance, lights flashing, and Stephen walking out to the ambulance, and everybody looking out the window.
Yeah.
It was very, very stressful. And but anyway, I went to the hospital. My wife came out to meet me at the hospital. She was very worried. In the ambulance, my voice went again. I couldn't talk. And went out to Beaumont Hospital. I was sitting in the emergency room, and when she came, actually, it went again. But then a consultant came out to me,
Mm.
and he goes, "Stephen, come on, I want to bring you over here." And he brought me to a different part of the hospital. It was kind of dark. There was no one really around, and he examined me, went through all my vitals, everything like that, and everything seemed fine. And he looked me deadpan in the eye, and this is back in 2014, so I was only in my early 30s,
Mm.
and he said, "I know exactly what's wrong with you. You're stressed.
Mm.
That's all this is. It's just stress." And that was like a light bulb going off. It was like, yep, I always knew it. I'd always call myself a stress cadet. You know,
Okay.
it's like people on the same project could be looking at the same work, the same issues, but for me, it was no, we have to get it fixed. We have to get it fixed. And so I made a decision. I said I'm gonna do something about this. So that night, lying in bed, couldn't sleep, and Bird actually I should say that the company I was working for at the time were absolutely fantastic. They said, listen, take as much time. I think I had 2 weeks booked off in about a week's time. So they said,
Mm.
listen, take this week off, come back when you're feeling
Mm.
well. But that night I said, right, I'm going to do something about this. And I looked up stress management,
Mm.
and I found this phrase, which was totally new to me, called mindfulness. And turned out there was a mindfulness course starting the very next day, about 10-15 minutes drive from my house.
Okay.
So I was off work next day. I rang. It was a yoga studio, part of a shop in Lucan or in Leixham. And I rang and I said, listen, I'd really like to join. I think it would really benefit me. And the person in the shop said, oh, normally you talk away to the instructor, but come along tomorrow. I'll be talking today. I'll let him know you're on the way. And so I turned up at the door. It was a winter. It was in October. Actually, it was about this time. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
actually about this time of the year. And I turned up at the door and didn't know what to expect at all. But I turned up about 10 minutes earlier to chat to the guy and told him exactly what happened the day before. And he looked at me and goes, "You might be a bit raw, and
Yeah.
but sit down, see you get on." And that was the first night of the 8-week MBSR, mindfulness based stress reduction course, and I never looked back.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it was life changing to me. But one thing it brought mindfulness has brought to me over the years, though, is that just an awareness, that there's many facets to mindfulness, but I just think that's that awareness to know when things are not working, and to be
Mm.
able to just turn the dial. And then through practice, we begin to kind of make that little gap between our stimulus and our response slightly bigger, and we can just bring more awareness into, hey, why am I feeling like that again?
Mm.
Rather than the autopilot coming in and just kicking in and saying, ah, right, that's not right, that's not right, I can't do that. And it's like a stone gatherer moss run down a hill. It just gets worse and worse, and you're not putting that brake on it. You're not putting
Mm.
that interrupt to stop the pattern. So that was my introduction to mindfulness.
Mm.
And so I did that 8-week course and practiced myself for a while, and then I found a beautiful course a couple of years back called the Mindfulness Based Living course. And it's actually a course taught through the UK, through the Mindfulness Association in the UK, but they brought it to a place called a Sanctuary in Dublin City, and I studied there. It was about a year and a half altogether, on
Mm.
their teaching course as well. So I absolutely loved it. So
Yeah.
it's not everyone's introduction to mindfulness, but that was
Yeah.
mine.
Absolutely. And it's the one thing as like the question I'd love to follow up with that before I get into it more is sense of like the part of it, in the sense of becoming that awareness,
Mhm.
and you know, when you can catch yourself maybe in those situations. But do you think then, where that the before picture that you painted, in a sense of that sort of, it must be done right, it must be, you know, sort of
Mhm.
that sort of absolute sort of zero tolerance, the way I was seeing it, in a sense of
Yeah.
like, and where other people could kind of think, well, actually, did it, has that mindfulness, the training you've done, enabled you to act and think in a different way in those situations now?
Absolutely. I'm still working in IT.
Well, there you
So
go.
I'm still
Yeah.
like, and I'm still working on projects which are just as stressful.
Yeah.
But the difference is, and it goes back to that phrase, this too shall pass.
Yeah.
That you know that it'll be peaks and troughs, and we will get through these times. But I also know that sometimes you don't need to know all the answers up front.
Mm,
Whereas the old Stephen needed to know what route we're going, what exactly we're doing, and it's yeah, no, I definitely have changed, but but it goes back to though is that like yes, I still do get stressed, but I have the ability to recognize when I'm getting stressed,
mm.
if that makes sense. That it's
Yeah.
you can stop yourself before you get to that autopilot, that automatic response, and like yes, I still have had geez, days in work recently, even when ended up working until about 12:30 at night, and I came out to my wife. She asked me, "Are you okay?" And I just bawled for
Mm,
about a minute, let it out, said, "Ah, you did that," and it
mm.
was just a release. You know, it's like
Yeah.
yeah, like because we will go through times where stress builds up on us, and sometimes, unfortunately, that we feel that we should react in certain ways, and emotions. Like I'm a very emotional person. I'll
Mm,
cry on the on the slightest thing, but um, I think sometimes when we suppress those emotions, that's where we come into difficulty. When we're
mm.
trying to not like we're not living by our core values. We're not living
Yeah.
by what's important to us, and sometimes we just have to let those things out and acknowledge them, and then
Mm.
move on, and then move on.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think, yeah. I mean, it is a sort of that ability, as you say, that ability to um, want to recognize the emotion that's there,
Mhm.
and allow it to just be, and whatever that manifests as itself, whether it's, if it's in tears, or if it's in whatever it is,
Yeah,
it's like, if the more you resist, as you say, the more
yeah,
it, and I reading about this the other day, or I was watching, so yeah, no, I've been reading Jerry Hussey's book at the moment. I think it's Awaken the Power, and he was very much talking about his experience, in the sense of like the physical manifestation and the physiological changes that he himself experienced from his, essentially his mind, you know. And it's like, and I think that the points that you've raised there and the stories you've shared is like, there is a physiological change in your body
yeah,
from what your mind can
yeah,
create, or determine or believe. And that's, and stress is, it can't be underestimated how powerful
yeah.
it can be, and the effects it can actually have.
Absolutely. It's like and that's one thing actually. When we were actually doing our mindfulness training as well, is that we looked at emotional and physical responses to
Mm,
certain stimuli as well. And but it's like when I was in that hospital at the time, I thought I was physically having a stroke, but it wasn't. It was stress. It was a stress reaction. But I'm a firm believer that the universe has our back, and sometimes if we need to give our life a shift, your body will tell you.
yeah, yeah, and it is it's mad that you say that, actually, in the sense of that phrase, because um, in a sense of like, there's a group that I'm working with at the moment, with Amanda Delaney, and I'm working with her at the moment in the group that we have, and how obviously groups and things, and things change, and there's a sort of, what's the phrase, I don't know if it's called the familiarity complex. It's like when you see, if you see a white BMW, or you were thinking of
Yeah,
it, you'll see lots of white BMWs around. Or if you see
yeah,
that a particular word, you see it. And this thing of like, being open, manifestation.
Yeah.
You know, put out there, and it's like, and you know, the sort of the cynic in me from before would be kind of, you know, the practicality in my head would be kind of like
Yeah.
fighting against that thing. And it is interesting when you actually kind of just, you know what, I'm just going to let this be and just
Yeah.
see what happens. And it is, the more it comes, and it's kind of like you're trying to prove it wrong. But when you actually let it go and actually, you know, and sort of like release control almost,
Mhm. Yeah, you
it,
have to. And
things happen.
I'm big into manifestation.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
Okay. Yeah.
it's a big part of my life. I am, and but the one thing that like people have seen The Secret, they've seen these things, and I think yeah, if you think it, you believe it, it will happen. And
Yeah.
it is exactly like you're saying, that familiarity complex, that if you concentrate enough on certain things, that this is what I want in my life, you will only see those things because your brain naturally
Yeah.
will look for them. But it doesn't happen without one important ingredient, and this is the thing that most people forget: action. You have to take action. So if you do see something that you really want, you have to take action to go. I'll give you a good example, actually.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a total tangent now.
Yeah. No, go for it.
But a couple of years ago, there was I don't know if you've heard of an event called Pendulum, Pendulum Summit.
Yep. Yep.
Extremely expensive summit in
Yeah.
Dublin, and I had friends that were going there, and I said that I think it was the first night anyway. I got chatting. I was working in the city centre at the time, and got chatting on the way home to a good friend of mine that was at that day, and I had been following people's Instagram and kind of seeing pictures, and it just looked like an amazing day. And I said to
Yeah.
myself, right, what if I could manifest a ticket for tomorrow for free? So I said, right, what we'll do, and the friend actually is very, very open to that type of thing. And so we were chatting away, and she said, yeah, just, do you know what? Put it out there, go, and we'll see. And, but I had it like, I said, right, that's grand. I organized work. I said, right, listen, something's come up. I'm not able to go in tomorrow. And so in my head, I said, right, I'm getting ready for this event tomorrow because I have a ticket. And was absolutely sure I had to put. What else I did was I took action. I said I put a post up on social media. I said I would love to go to this event tomorrow. I can't afford a ticket, but I promise to pay it forward. And then I went home. I told my wife, "Listen, this is what I'm doing tomorrow. I'm getting the train." And I looked at what would I wear in the morning, what would I do, and then there was also a picture that I'd seen on social media. It's a fantastic picture from taken at the very back of the room, looking out at
Mm.
everybody. And so I started just concentrating that and feeling the energy in that room, just sensing that I am there. This is the room that I'm in. And so I went to bed. I set my alarm, got up, got the train, and I was sure I was going to this event. And there's a fantastic meditation song that I listen to all the time. It's called Devi Prayer, and what's his name? I can't think of his name. Shared it before, and it'll come to me in a few minutes. But anyway, so I was
Yeah.
meditating on this, and I just had this image. I just kept thinking in my eyes of this this seat, this view of the room, and as if my energy was already there. I was in
Yeah.
this room, and at this point, I still didn't have a ticket. This was like 6:30, 7
Yeah.
o'clock in the morning, and I'm on the train, and sorry, it was later. It was about 7:30, and the train is coming into the train station at the very back of the convention center, and I'm kind of saying, I just had this belief that this would all happen. I would actually get a ticket. Now, I was not going into this if I did not have a ticket. I was
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
I wasn't opening the back door and sneaking in. So train stops literally at the same time as the music stopped on this song, and I went to walk, and I said, no, I'll just let all these people out in front of me because it
Mm.
has to happen. You know, I was thinking like,
Yeah.
no, it hasn't
Yeah.
happened yet. It hasn't happened yet. And this is honest truth. I went to step off the train, and literally as my foot hit the platform, I got a text on my phone, and it was from a good friend of mine, James. He said, Stephen, have you got a ticket yet? And I just replied back, no, but I'm on my way and I'm manifesting as I walk. And I thought, yeah, he'll text me back straight away, because I knew James knows a
Yeah.
lot of people, and he'd know somebody in there that
Yeah.
might have a ticket or that. And I didn't hear back from him. And I'm walking out of the train station. We're walking along the canal, Still haven't heard back from him. And then I turned the corner right in front of the convention center, and I get this text back: "You can take mine. I'm not well and I can't go." And it turns out that a friend of mine had seen my post, contacted James, said, "James, I heard you're not well. Would you pay it forward?"
Yeah.
And turned out that James was not well at all that day. There was no way he was able to travel up to get to use the ticket. And he transferred it to me, and I used it, and I had the most amazing day ever. It was just unbelievable. It was just that, it was the energy in the room. But that's it. The coincidences don't stop there.
Yeah.
I walked in and I met my friend Karen, and she was saying, "Oh, I'm meeting my friend Kira." And I said, "Oh, yeah, Grant, yeah." Didn't realize that the person I was following on social media is also a friend of Karen's, and they had met each other the day before. And what I also didn't realize is that the seat that I would be sitting on was right beside Kira and right where that photo was taken the day before. So the view that I had for that day was the view that I was mentally visualizing constantly the night before. What an amazing coincidence.
That's mad.
So that was my one big manifestation that I love. But the big thing about it is that you have to take the action. You know, when you see that, like the thing, you will be attracted to things, you will see things out there, but it's about taking the action when you see the opportunity as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's
Sorry, a bit of a tangent. Sorry.
Oh no, but I love that, and it's a brilliant story, but I think what it really cements for me in the story is it brings a few things together. There's an absolute belief, and that's what I think sometimes we can all struggle with, in a sense of like, we have an idea, we have a thought, we have a thing, but because we don't really believe it, we kind of hold back. But also in a sense of then, but you were going in it with the belief, but also, as you said, it's like, well, I'm not going to just break in or sneak in. It's like, but I'm going to go with it and keep walking to the door, and it's going to happen. But the reason, though, as well, as you say, to pair it with the action, to put it out there, literally put it out, and not sort of putting out there in a sort of a thought process, in a sense of, but actually using the tools that you have, and the fact that other people, they did it, and so it's that domino effect or whatever. So it's a brilliant example of a story to want to believe, but also to take action.
And it's I think it's also important to give back. It was very important to me that I paid it forward. That ticket was very expensive. Now, James would have not used it. It wouldn't have mattered, but it was important for me to give back. So I was going to an event then later on that year called Momentum, and I bought spare tickets and gave them out to other people as well for free. So it kind of it's a circle. It's a circle.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's a brilliant example of the sort of, as you say, energy you can put out there, the positivity, and I think, am I right in some ways, like the way I was listening to it in some ways as well, it was like going into it with the sort of the hope, obviously, because you wanted to get into that sort of that room and feel that energy, but also, am I right thinking that the expectation was kind of like, well, whatever happens, happens?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
As opposed to, as you say, the old Stephen would have been like, no, this has to happen type thing, and that sort of clinging type thing.
Yeah, and you've actually hit the nail on the head a bit, and that's one thing actually that's changed in my life in the last few years. One thing I did over the last few years was I spoke at TEDx, but actually coincidentally, that seed was born about 4 or 5 years ago, and the picture of it actually came up there in my memories there yesterday, and it's a picture of me sitting in an audience in watching a TEDx event, but I had at the time I said, right, I'm going to speak at TEDx, and it was a journey I wanted to share. I wanted something positive to come out of my journey, because I had some very dark days, but I wanted, and it all happened because of the unfortunate events of one person caused a very horrific accident. But I wanted something positive to come out of that, and I was sure that, right, if I do now, I did workshop after workshop. I joined Toastmasters. Everything I could do to be a public speaker, I did. and I was rejected 9 times from TEDx. I applied to 9 different events before I was actually accepted. But what changed for me in that was that I, instead of turning that goal, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier on about looking at a goal as an end destination, I looked at it as a journey. So anytime I was rejected, I got to meet people along that way. I got to interact with some of the organizers, but then I was swayed a different path along the journey. And rather than thinking of a goal as an end destination, think about the journey and what you're going to learn along the way. So that was a totally different Stephen to what was a couple of years back.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's that thing of one of the things I found in the sense of the sort of, you could say, probably now 10 years or so that I've been trying to sort of, what I've moved into, what I'd say the personal development or really consciously personal development world for myself, and then outside of it, is that very thing of what I found is the goal as such that maybe that you set for yourself becomes quite secondary to the experiences that you have along the way, as you just said. And one of the biggest things that I found is literally what you just said, is the people you meet and the connections you make, and they cannot be underestimated and dismissed in the sense of the value that you get from like the people that I've met literally from all over the world, from various things that I've done that have now become friends and very close friends. And if you only focus, as you say, on that end destination, you're missing so much of what could be there along the way.
Yeah, we've got blinkers on just looking at the end destination. We're forgetting about all those moments all along the way.
So the last thing on the mindfulness piece that I'd love to talk about, obviously from we'll say it's probably a selfish perspective because of the fact that I'm starting this podcast in this year. But obviously, you then took that sort of the mindfulness that you learned and put it into a podcast. So tell me, in a sense, of how that came about.
Yeah. So it was a journey I was thinking, because it was after I done TEDx, and I just wanted to be able to share. I was it's like about balancing life, and I needed to pay the bills, I need to do my IT work to do that, but I also wanted to be able to communicate with people and break down barriers. Because I found when I was studying mindfulness, there's a certain set of mindset within people, very open-minded, lovely people. But when you're trying to talk to people, so for example, in the IT world about mindfulness, there's a yawn straight away. It's like mindfulness. Oh yeah, what's that about? And but there's so many different aspects to mindfulness that a lot of people think that mindfulness is just literally sitting in a corner and meditating on your own. But there's so many ways that, like we've talked about, moments and just appreciating moments throughout your day and just being more present in whatever you're doing. But like that, there's so many different opportunities throughout your day that you can be mindful. And I wanted to try and break down those barriers. And my idea was basically to talk about it and just talk to people. And there's a phrase I ask everyone in every episode. I say, what does mindful living mean to you? And I'm amazed by how different people interpret that question. But many people talk about balance. Many people talk about priorities in life and awareness, just being present. But they're all very personal to each person. And I hope that by bringing out a podcast, that people will be able to just share conversations. But one thing that I'm really, really passionate about is opening up men's conversations about mental health. And it's one thing I've talked about in this series. Actually, to talk about my own mental health, I took a year off. I started the podcast. I think it was about 30 odd episodes or so. And then one of my lifelong goals was to build a beautiful, beautiful house for my family. And I got the opportunity there about a year ago to start a project. But I knew that I would not have the mental capacity to keep all these plates spinning at the same time.
Yeah.
So I took the decision to take a break. And we're only back, I think, 3 episodes in. Actually, there's an episode literally just gone out tonight. And but part of this series, I really wanted to make sure that I talk to more men about mental health, because I find women are much more open to talk about their struggles. But men, and I know, like, when I had those struggles, I kind of alluded to in 2017, a few years ago. I'd say it was about 3 or 4 months before I opened up about exactly how I felt and how
Mm.
low I was, and that really hit home for me, and it made me kind of feel that because of that, it's important for me to try and encourage people to make conversations, and even just listen to this conversation between us
Yep.
two might encourage someone to say, "Hey, it's okay to actually just tell someone, do you know what? I'm not feeling the way I normally feel,
Yep.
and there's something different about me right now, and I need to talk to someone." Like I took a lot of interventions between counseling, between medication at the time, obviously meditation as well, and it took a lot to help me to get there. But it wasn't until I opened up and that conversation, actually chatted to people.
Mm.
So it's a long-winded answer to your question, but yeah,
Yeah.
it was my podcast is to help people talk.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's and I love that. Really wanted to know the answer to that question and really appreciate the answer. But it's like, and there's so many things in it. But one of the things that I really take from it, and it kind of really reflects, I think, on myself, is that thing of conversation.
Yeah,
So, and it's like, it's, I think I've said it in a few episodes when I was, or mentioned it to a few people, the idea of starting this podcast. And I asked myself this question, well, what would be important to me,
yeah,
in doing this? And I just got the piece of paper, got the pen, and just started writing. No
yeah,
editing, just write it, write it, write it.
yeah,
And this word conversation popped up. And I wasn't thinking that,
yeah,
you know, and I was like that, and I just thought, oh, that's even quite interesting, because by having a conversation, it's not just me talking.
yeah,
You're bringing in someone else and other people, and having your own, either your own thoughts, challenge, ideas, feelings, thoughts, whatever, and then someone to bounce them off. But as you highlighted the point there in relation to men talking,
yeah,
and it is a sort of, I'm almost sort of bored of the cliche, but it's still true.
yeah,
It's the frustration thing, is that it's still so relevant, in a sense. Like, when I so as a coach myself, you know I'm in the minority of, you got some very high profile, obviously, men out there. But if you look at it as a, as a general, in the sort of this type of world, if you want to call it well-being, wealth, and wellness coaching, there's more women in it, because there's, I think, as you say, there's that openness to them. But then when if I chat to any, or speak to any men who've experienced something similar to yourself and then have spoken, I've not come across a man who said, "Oh, that was rubbish,"
yeah,
and it made me feel worse.
yeah. And what I love is that it's giving people permission to talk, and people you wouldn't expect. Like I've been astounded over the years about people who have contacted me that I've had on pedestals, thinking, oh, they are made of iron. Like there's nothing can stop them. But we are all more similar than we are different, as Nicola Conley Byrne says many times. It's You'd be amazed at like how those feelings that you have at 4 o'clock in the morning when you just can't sleep, and you think that I'll just go on my phone and that might get me asleep. But those feelings that you have are shared by many, many people. And it's not until we actually open up, and you just feel like you've got a weight off your shoulders by
Completely.
thinking, like, I don't have to be strong today.
Mm,
It's okay to share what I'm feeling right now.
absolutely. I think it's a great point, and I'm sure I've stolen this from someone. It could be Tony Robbins, but kind of the point that you're just saying is like, when there's no thought or feeling you've had that the people haven't experienced over the lifetime of the world, in a sense of,
Yeah,
for centuries, not just in the modern day context. It's like all those worries, doubts, and fears that you think you're the only one in your head experiencing them. Millions of people have either experienced them now or before, but by you believing they're the only one, it's beyond isolating.
yeah,
It keeps you trapped in that space. So, and once you actually realize that, no, there's hundreds, thousands, millions of people have actually had that same similar thought, it's actually quite liberating and freeing.
and it's funny you're saying that as well, because one thing I've studied as well is compassion and self-compassion
Mm,
in the mindfulness concept. But there is there's a person who's fantastic called Christine Neff, and one of the practices that she has called self-compassion break. One of the things is about looking at the common humanity, looking at that. Many people feel this, that what I'm feeling right now in this moment is not unique. And unfortunately, when the clouds come over and you're feeling very down, that we feel that it's just us, it's only us. And it's like we could say this until the cows come home, like everybody has these feelings,
Yeah,
everybody.
yeah, absolutely. I stole your quote earlier, so apologies for that. But are there any other sort of, I'm interested, or I'd like to ask, is there any sort of people or that have influenced you or impacted you, whether it be public eye or otherwise?
Yeah, oh, many people on my journey. Like you actually had mentioned Amanda Delaney. Amanda Delaney was inspirational in my journey and gave me an absolute amazing opportunity to share my story many years ago. In the more public eye, there's one person in particular. I went to a retreat with them a couple of years ago called David G. It's David J.I. for anyone who wants to look him
Yeah,
up. But he was phenomenal. He's just such a kind, open man, and I loved it so much. But one thing we talked about over that weekend was the concept of bringing in pattern interrupts, and it goes back to
mm,
everything we were talking about earlier on, about when you're trying to break that cycle and just interrupting the patterns within your head. You mentioned Tony Robbins. I'm a
mm.
big fan of Tony Robbins. It's actually Tony, who I couldn't remember the name of a few
Yeah,
earlier on.
okay, yeah, yeah,
It was actually part of if you look at his documentary on Netflix, actually,
yep,
that song Debbie Prayer is when they're meditating, you'll see it. Um, it's fantastic. Many people on my own journey, my wife.
yeah,
I am absolutely blessed and honored to share this journey through life with an absolute soulmate. We've had many ups and downs, but we have a few golden rules, and one of them is to never go to bed in an argument or never
mm,
leave the house in an argument.
mm,
Um, I think it could come back to, because my brother was here one day and gone the next.
mm.
It made us a lot more aware of when we should have conversations and not go to bed in argument. And listen,
Yeah.
yes, I practice mindfulness, but yes, we have many arguments.
Yeah, yeah, and absolutely, and I think that's a really valid point. I think sometimes when we talk about things like this, or you talk, we're in this space, and there's someone who's maybe not in the space yet listening, and they can go, ah, it's sort of like this phrase, the phrase of easy for you,
Yeah, it's well for
and it's
them.
like, oh yeah, exactly. That's even better. I sure as well for them is right, and you kind of like, no, this stuff isn't easy. It
Oh,
does it may because you're hearing language, you can talk about it because you're into it, you know about
mhm.
it, you've done the work, but
Yeah.
the work is consistent. The work is, working on yourself and being with yourself and doing those things is a continual practice. And it
Yes.
doesn't mean that you don't being sort of mindful or working on yourself, or having that awareness doesn't mean that you don't experience the shite.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
means that you may be able to catch it sooner than you did before and get out of it a bit quicker.
Yeah. Your ability to bounce back is
Yeah,
a lot better.
yeah, absolutely. Stephen, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I just have one more question for you, which
Yeah.
is, what's important for your future?
What's important for my future? Do you know, I should listen to my own advice. I've been talking and talking about creating a book, creating courses, and I've started them and they're in my head. And I think that's really important to my future, because having conversation like this, sharing my passion for mindfulness, is something I want to do on a full-time basis.
Mm,
But I've been keep falling back to my old reliable, and in fairness now, I love my job. I love my full-time job. But I think it's important for me. Um, I'm I'm a big into visualization, and it's like I've always have this vision that I'll have a career outside what I'm doing right now. So I think it's important to me to to open up to the universe and just let it happen.
Love it. Absolutely. As I say, it's been fabulous to chat to you, Stephen. Now that obviously you've come back with the podcast, it's as
Yep.
you say, you just after your the year break, so you could do your house, which is fantastic. So obviously, I'd love to support your podcast. If you want to give everyone again a reminder and a shout out of where they can find you.
Absolutely. So the podcast is called the Mindful Living Guide. I've got a website where all the archives of all the episodes are on, called mindfulliving.guide. You'll also find on Facebook, Mindful Living Guide. I'm on Instagram. You can follow me on either Stephen Downey, it's my own personal page, or else Mindful Living Guide. But really, if you just search Mindful Living Guide anywhere,
Yeah, I'd say
you'll
you're
find
going
them.
to find it.
You'll find it, and it's obviously on Spotify, Apple, on all other ones. But James, thank you so much for inviting me to be on. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and it's great to be on the other side and
Yeah.
not being having to think of, oh, what will I ask next?
Oh no, thank you so much for coming back on. I really enjoyed the chat. And just to let everyone know, we'll have all the links obviously to Stephen's show and where you can find him as well. But yeah, thanks again, Stephen.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to What's Important to You. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, and share. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Again, you can follow me at James Dean Coaching on Facebook and Instagram. Connect with me on LinkedIn or find out more about me on jamesdeancoaching.com.